We are live. Amelia?
Oh, yeah, it's me this today that's welcoming it off. I'm used to you kind of giving your spiel.
Oh,
Uh, this is what happens when we change up the format. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining Wicked Connected. I'm excited today because we obviously have Chris Caprio on the line today. He's our first ever guest, so we're gonna get to chat with him a little bit. We will be changing up the format, so not all of us are going to be doing a round robin of the events we went to last week, but we are going to give Chris the floor to kind of talk a little bit more about, what events he's gone to. So Chris, I'll start that off with you, but then after you tell us about the event that you went to in the last couple of weeks, I know you've been traveling. Really would love to just hear your initial perspective on networking, how you got into it, what it's done for your career. And then obviously, as our title suggests, from CFO to CEO, I'm sure we'll ask a couple questions related to that as well.
No, I can't thank you all enough, Amelia, Steve, and Jeff. Thank you for having me. It's pretty cool. Anything titled "Wicked Anything" is worth joining, right? I'm from Boston. No, I think, as you mentioned, I mean, there's always events, right? I mean, there's always stuff to do. I would say I went to an FEI event that was whiskey tasting 2 weeks ago. And then last week in Miami, I can't complain. We were on a beach and they had an event outside at the Eden Rock Hotel. I got to meet some cool people, mostly not from Boston, so that's always fun. And then coming up, I have one Wednesday night. This is kind of goes with the theme of the CFO to CEO. I mean, I've been in finance for the bulk of my career, so I've always geared towards CFO-based networking events. But there's a group called EO, and they're geared towards entrepreneurs and owners, and they're having a kind of get to know us. I'm not a member yet, but obviously they're trying to get me as a member, which I might be. But they're having an event on Wednesday, so that's kind of my first known event that's geared towards CEOs and owners that I'm used to hanging with CFOs, and I'm more comfortable in that space. So I'm looking forward to it Wednesday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard really good things about EO. I haven't been to an event, but I know when I was at Insperity, a couple of the people there had relationships and they got a lot of value out of it. So
Good to know.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks and I'll definitely pick your brain about how it went.
Absolutely.
For sure. Now, I guess obviously you went from CFO to CEO. Tell us that story. That's a big one.
Yeah, it was funny. It was a year Saturday, so 2 days ago. It was a year. So yeah, I started at Focus 7.5, 8 years ago as a CFO. Two gentlemen owned the company. We looked at taking investment, selling over the last few years. It didn't quite work out. So I had a conversation. We had dinner, the three of us, probably April timeframe of 2023. Yeah, 2023. Got my dates right. And said, "What the heck? Let's agree on a number, and I'll go raise capital and buy you guys out." You could tell both of them wanted out of the business. One was already out of the business. One was existing CEO, but I think ready to retire. So I did. I went out, raised capital through my network. Absolutely, I would have never been able to do that without networking in the private equity, family office, and high net worth individual space. Put together about 8 investors and closed on November 2nd. Amazingly, in my plan was moving from CFO to CEO. Quick, I guess, I did move technically, but I'm still Slash, so I still am the CEO and CFO of Focus Technology. But yeah, it's been a year. It's been amazing. Really exciting, a lot different than what I thought it would be, but mostly good.
So can you tell us a little bit? I'd love to hear, I know, Amelia, you sort of asked this at the beginning. We'd love to hear how you started networking, and maybe take the angle of what mistakes did you make early on that you learned from that allowed you to get people to basically give you funding for.
Yeah.
The biggest mistake is the mistake I didn't make, which is I didn't start networking until I was probably in my 30s. I tell every early career individual I meet, including a woman we hired about 6 months ago out of college, to start networking. The worst thing you can do is do what I did, which is wait probably 10 years into my career before I started doing it. So that was my single biggest mistake, was not doing it. Certainly, I think in order to do it right, you have to realize it's a job. It is a job, and you have to treat every person like they're going to be the best network referral or the best customer, because you just never know. As much LinkedIn research, internet research, talks from whoever referred you to that person, you may think, all right, I'll meet with this person, and whatever might happen. And then you get there, and in my case, they're desperate for IT services. You just never know when it happens. And some of my best success stories were people that I thought I was going there to help, and I got a contract out of it. So, you definitely need to do it regularly, be open. It's going to take a lot of your time. But I think it's worth doing, because you get to meet so many great people. It's impossible for me as a CFO and now a CEO to know everything that's going on in healthcare with benefits, every new law that's coming out, every new structure for a deal, or every new commercial banking lending out there, whatever it might be. I'm trying to sit with them and learn from them, and if I can help them from an IT perspective, hey, I can tell you what's going on in cybersecurity. I have a little bit of knowledge about what's going on in AI, not a ton. And that's all I'm trying to do, is learn from them. Hopefully they learn from me, and then leave that meeting saying, okay, I know 3 or 4 people that I think would be perfect to connect with you. And hopefully I get the same in return.
Absolutely.
And I think there's something really key in there that you said. You said one of the best partners that you came out with, you had no idea. You were going in there thinking about how you can help them.
Yeah.
So I think, you being past president of FEI, previous Boston Business Journal's CFO of the year, you've obviously built a reputation for yourself by being an avid networker, but you've done that by giving. So is that something that you think about when you're networking, or is that something you've had to kind of learn it, that skill you've had to hone?
Yeah, I think you have to learn. I think you don't realize early on the value your network has to certain people, that especially people starting out. I happen to have a ton of experience on the commercial banking side. I've done a lot of work with various banks, in both national banks and regional banks, and that's been an entry point into a lot of conversations I've had, is how do I structure M&A? And certainly you can go raise capital on the equity side, which we did a year ago, and that's certainly an avenue. But an easier, cheaper avenue, especially 2, 3, 4 years ago and prior, was low interest commercial financing, whether it's on the ABL side or based on profitable EBITDA lending, and just giving them an understanding of and I use that experience of understanding commercial banking and lending was in my job interview at Focus. And it's really how I got the job, because I had 2 gentlemen who I later bought out, kind of ironic, but at the time wanted to do acquisitions. Neither of them had ever done it in their career. And part of my interview was whiteboarding how we're going to go, in the end of the day, not pay a nickel and buy a company. And that's what we did. We used their future cash flow to obviously pay for the company. But when it came to money down, I was lucky. Focus didn't have any debt at the time, so we could take on debt. But we did 2 acquisitions without really spending any of our own capital. So that's just an example of, I learned that through networking, through meeting with people, and got me this job. And here I am as CEO 7 years later.
So I'm going to jump in, because I literally just this morning, I teach over at UMass Boston, and a student stopped in my office, and we're talking about, she's an MBA student, and we're talking about, she's writing a thesis. And I said, are you on LinkedIn? And she said, oh yeah. And so I open up, find her on LinkedIn. She's got 32 connections. And, and I said, can I give you some advice? I'm like, you've got to start building this list of connections. She's like, well, I really just like to meet people live, and I really want to, interact with them on LinkedIn. And so I guess 2 questions for you. One is, what advice do you give to people starting out? You said you didn't start networking until you were in your 30s. I think I basically just started networking about 2 years ago, and when I turned 50. So, so I'm a little bit behind. But I certainly know why I didn't do it, even though I regret that I wish I'd started sooner. But what would you say to people who are just starting out? How do you get them over that, sort of fear / cringe factor that they feel like, oh, I can't really do this?
It's funny. So I have three teenage daughters, and my oldest just went off to college and set up a LinkedIn profile. And I think it's very simply, it's Instagram for business or TikTok for business. It kind of relates to someone that age that, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not posting all the personal stuff. Like I look at my daughter, and if you go on her Instagram page, you'll see her Halloween costumes from Halloween weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And obviously LinkedIn, while it's got its moments where people get a little personal, for the most part, it's business related. So it's trade shows I've gone to or customer meetings or events, but it's the same methodology as I'm posting what I'm doing from a business perspective. And to me, it's not much different from, as these kids are growing up, posting online, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, whatever they're using nowadays, Snapchat, whatever it might be.
Right.
I'm aging myself right now, but I think it's very similar. So, and I use the internship. I think starting with internships, meaning any boss or anybody you're going to look for to get an internship with, it's in our DNA to look at your LinkedIn profile. I mean, I don't think I've ever, I shouldn't say ever, but in the last 10 years at least, if not more, I don't think I've ever interviewed somebody, whether it's I'm going to see them as a customer or prospect, or whether they're coming in for a job interview, or I was going for a job interview, or heck, you can look on LinkedIn and you'll see, Jeff, I looked at your profile today. I mean, I knew Stephen and Amelia before, but that's just, we want to get as much research and get as much understanding. And to your point, when you go to, I use the term, when you go into that internship, if you have 32 connections, that's not going to be helpful. But if you have a couple hundred, you may be at a company where your babysitter maybe knows somebody that works there or whatever, your college roommate or whatever. That's the power of LinkedIn, is it gives you that opportunity to see, okay, I'm not connected with that person or that company, but who do I know that might be connected with them? And man, I mean, it's a true story. I spent an hour on the phone today with one of my sales reps, honest to God, went through 75 connections that he had analyzed that he thought were good companies. And I was first connection to either a CFO, VP of finance, IT person at that. And of course, you get the beauty of LinkedIn. Maybe 40 of those people, I was like, oh, I know them well. And 35 were like, I have no idea how I got connected to that person. But you never know. In my research, and I'll be on my phone, and there'll be somebody from my college or high school, or in finance. When I was president of FEI, I was trying to hit up a lot of CFOs just to come to our events. So I'm sure some of them were related to that. But I would just say to that person, I assume they're looking for internship, or obviously now a job as they're getting out of school. It's a must. I mean, I don't know what else I would do. I mean, honestly, I had a conversation with a woman looking for a CFO role, and she kind of was in that boat of just starting to network, and she's behind the eight ball. I mean, she's just starting out, and it's difficult. You need to build those relationships, grow that network, because I mean, I don't know anybody I shouldn't say that. I know very few people recently that have applied and received a CFO job through LinkedIn, or any other recruiting tool. They're seeing an ad out there, but then they're reaching out to their whole network, trying to get an interview, and then the rest is history. So it is extremely important in your career.
Well, I think usually when that LinkedIn job ad shows up, you're usually too late, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes 8 seconds, and 1,000 people could, apply to that with AI. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, now with AI built into all these platforms, if your resume doesn't perfectly, you might be the perfect role fit for the job, but maybe your resume doesn't accurately reflect that. So when you hit apply on LinkedIn, like at my age, I have a lot of people who are moving careers. So I talk to a lot of friends about applying for jobs, and they're like, I have friends who've applied for 15 jobs, gone through 7 interviews at each job, haven't gotten it. Are they qualified? Absolutely. And my feedback is, have you reached out to the hiring manager? Like, don't just hit apply on LinkedIn, go in. Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone who went this? Maybe someone there went to your college. Maybe someone there already has that job. Reach out to them. Like, even if they don't know you, most companies have referral programs too. So they're most likely going to say, yeah, sure, I'll submit your resume for you. And now you're a step up.
My guess is the 7 jobs you're referring to, they lost to somebody who had a connection at that
Yeah.
place. I mean, that's just reality.
Right.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
had this happened 2 weeks ago. I had a friend applying for a CMO role. She was the final candidate, and the recruiter actually said, "I'm 100% sure you're going to get it." She didn't hear back. Turns out the CEO's neighbor had just become available. He got the job, and like, he was obviously qualified for the job. She was just like, oh, crap, like I really wanted that, and she got like 4 job offers that next week, so it didn't really matter. But they were all through her network though.
Yeah.
And that's really the defining feature.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think, Chris, I know the person you mentioned who's 6 months out, because she was somehow shocked. She's like, "How do you know Chris?" And so I said, "Well, it actually comes back to the whole networking thing. So it's good to see that he's practicing and pushing down what he speaks, because clearly, and she and I had a really good conversation about that, and I think she was pretty excited about it too, right? I think that not everybody has that level of excitement. But when you kind of explain it out and say, "Well, these are some of the reasons," that sort of thing, and you oftentimes see the light bulbs go on. So that's always good to hear. I know, Chris, one thing we should probably do is, if you want to give like a little, just a snippet of what you guys do over at Focus, right? And kind of what your ideal customer looks like, that sort of thing. Obviously, use the time for a little Q&A, that sort of thing.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, Focus Technology. I've been in business about 25 years, based here in Boston, but have employees in about 15 states, about 100 employees. And we're an outsourced IT company. We help companies comply with cybersecurity requirements. We manage and migrate data to the cloud for them. We have an internal help desk, a network operating center, a security operating center, really managing any outsourced IT projects or fully outsourced IT department for companies. Our target market is under 2,000 employees, focusing on the professional services, healthcare, manufacturing, and public sector industries. It's a wide variety, but we narrowed that down from a lot more. And again, with this investment we've taken on, we're now looking at, I would call it East Coast domestic expansion. I was in New York last week at a trade show looking at that market, talking with some partners there. Traditionally, our business has been New England only, but we are looking at New York and to Florida. We have employees right now up and down the East Coast, but our sales is traditionally here in New England, but trying to expand that both organically and through M&A. But yeah, any small middle market companies that are looking for a SOC 2 certified security firm like ourselves to help manage their environment, help with their day-to-day endpoint and network management.
Great.
I'm interested to hear, since you're sort of expanding geographically, one of the conversations that we often have is do you find that networking in Boston is different than networking elsewhere? And if so, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think in the major cities it is. It's, just having been recently in Miami and New York, I mean, 2 massive cities when you compare them to Boston. I think the biggest piece of networking is the in-person aspect of it. I think you can network through Zoom. I've done it, but it's just easier to kind of chill and have a coffee. I would say that's my number 2 point, I guess. If you like networking, you better start liking coffee or tea or something. Lunch is a little too long for networking unless you really know the person, but coffee, that 30, 45-minute coffee is great. But I would say it's harder in New York, as an example. A lot of people I was meeting there last week came over, took the train in from Jersey, or they could be in New York City, but it could take 2 hours to get there. So it does make it more complicated. Same with Miami. If you look at where South Beach is, or the regular Miami Beach, and then where Brickell and where the business districts are, and then where like Miami is, and then where Miami Dolphins play football. I mean, it's significantly spread out. A lot more traffic in those 2 cities in particular. I think Boston, I'll call it a middle to smaller city. It's really, most people live along 495 or in, and it's not crazy to say let's meet in Boston or along 128. So it does make it easier. I don't think the networking itself is different. I just think some of the major cities, it's a lot more complicated to meet people, and certainly they're much bigger. In Boston, I don't think the CFO community, as an example, is that big. So you run into a lot of the same people, and it makes it a lot easier because you're referring people to people you know well, and typically you have somebody to refer somebody in banking and insurance and healthcare, whatever it might be. So I think Boston is really it's big enough, but it's not too big, and I think that makes it perfect.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Before we sort of do a wrap up question, because I'm interested to hear what's up next for you, is where can people reach you, Chris, if they want to work with Focus?
The best is LinkedIn. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, or happy to, through this show, get my contact, email, phone. That's another unique thing is, if you want to network, you better be available on all avenues, because you never know where people are going to contact you. So I have my Focus email, I have my Gmail, I have my cell phone, which you can text or call at any time. Or certainly LinkedIn is the best way. But yeah, being open in all those avenues is great. But I'm happy to grab a coffee with anybody. Give me a call. I know Stephen and Amelia were attest to. I mean, if you ask me for a coffee, I will get to you in the next 3 to 4 weeks at most. I enjoy meeting people, enjoy talking with people, and would love to sit down and help however I can, whatever their needs are, whether it's trying to find a job, trying to get into networking, trying to understand a new industry. I'd be happy to have a conversation.
I am totally taking you up on that, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I bet I like coffee, Jeff.
See, I'd of course gently push for wine and appetizers, but a little bit biased.
It has to. It's part of his job.
I feel like that, there's, to everything, there's a time and place, right?
You can't have a glass of wine every day, Stephen. I mean, maybe some people can. I can't.
So to sort of wrap up, I guess lightning round. What's a cool networking event coming up for you, Chris?
So I got that one with EO. It's just at a Italian restaurant in Waltham. I'm looking forward to that on Wednesday. And then I know I'm actually off to Pittsburgh and then Cleveland, and I have an event in Cleveland. I think it's actually at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
that'll be
I'm looking forward to that. That should be cool.
Which restaurant in Waltham?
Stanza di something.
Stación de Federal.
Stación, yes.
Okay, very cool.
I run past that restaurant all the time, but I've never been there. You have to tell
it's good.
us.
I've been there. Not the best parking, but it's a great upstairs, great meatballs. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome.
We've had the combined PDA and FEI events there. There's some other ones that
absolutely
Chris there as well.
Interesting.
Will you be back in time for the FEI event next, or the 13th or the 12th?
I'm missing the one on Tuesday, the Diwali one. Yeah, I'm flying back from Cleveland. Although I will plug on Thursday at Bentley, Thursday morning next week, is CFO Leadership Council's having an event. It's on AI, and we just hired a gentleman out of Atlanta, out of EY, who ran their global AI practice. He now works for Focus, and he will be on a panel there, and basically telling you as a small and mid-sized business how you should get started on your AI journey. So
that'll be a good one to listen to. I know
absolutely
the landscape of AI feels like it changes every day, and so does everyone's attitude towards it. So
it does.
It's something that we cannot keep up with and can't have enough panels on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we doing rounds?
Yeah, why don't you jump in? What are you doing this week?
Yeah. I'm going to an exciting event at Venture Lane. So the VC firm, they're hosting an event it's a startup pitch. So kind of a theme for a lot of the events I've been going to recently, more startup themes. Personally, I love them. Pitches are really cool. And just listening to people have cool new ideas that may or may not change the world is always exciting, especially hearing their passion behind it. But this one's going to be paired with whiskey. So I am really curious to see kind of how it all plays together. It's a new series that they're doing. Yeah, so it'll be on Wednesday night at like 6 or something p.m., 5 or 6 p.m. Their downtown Boston office.
Cool.
And I'll pass it back to you, Jeff.
Oh, all right.
Also my job
Thank you,
sometimes.
because I'm going to steal the one that Stephen may have been thinking. So Stephen and I are actually on a panel tonight in about an hour about preparing your business for the holidays with Connect e-commerce that's having an event in Waltham. So excited to do that. Always exciting to be on a panel. So looking forward to it. It should be a good discussion. And I guess
I love it. You get past Halloween, it's like boom.
You gotta cram it all in between now and then all the holiday parties, right?
My cousin already, my cousin's a teacher. She was up here this weekend. She's already decorating her whole classroom with like Christmas stuff. I'm like, no Thanksgiving. She's like, no, I'm skipping that.
I'm not even through with my Halloween activities yet. So.
I was at another Halloween party on this past Friday, dressed up as my wife was Axl Rose and I was Slash.
That's great. I like it.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like the holidays come up really, really fast. And I used to work at the Hershey company, and like we would start Easter as soon as the January 1st was over. So anyways.
Well, yes, certainly you mentioned the one for tonight, and I'm actually going to put it back to Chris for 1 second, because as we think about preparing for year end for the holidays, that sort of thing, I'd be interested, Chris, as to how you would respond to that. What do you see as kind of the key things that companies should be thinking about as we get into the holiday season?
Because we have no idea what we're going to say.
So we are going out December 6th. We're taking all of our employees on a cruise out of Boston.
Oh, nice.
Don't ask me the name. Don't ask me the details. I just know I'll be having a scotch and eating some food on a boat that has only Focus employees and their significant others. But I would say, this time of year, always looking at, making sure you take care of your employees.
Yeah.
It's always a slug in the IT space. We're a 24/7 company. Every Monday I come in and somebody updates me on what work our team did over the weekend, so I can send them a thank you or reach out to them. So I would start there, and then certainly budgets, right? I mean, we're in budget season, so let's forget about the sorrows of missing our numbers this year. Let's hit those numbers for next year. So those would be the two things I would think at least finance people would be thinking about at this time of year.
And make sure there's sufficiently a managed service / cyber budget as part of that, correct?
Those budgets are growing, let me tell you. They are.
That's for sure.
Next year.
No, I definitely appreciate that. And so, yes, Jeff, as you kind of took that on, that's helpful insights. Just quickly, I'll touch on one that I did last time. I think I brought it up briefly. And so as I've recently learned, there's a Boston Beanstalks club, basically for tall individuals. And I will say I went to that. It was pretty interesting. And apparently they actually have a national convention. So you have to be 6'2" as a guy. It is confirmed it's 5'10" as a female. So I didn't realize there's such a thing out there, but it was pretty interesting. So that'll be a different networking group than what I'm used to.
Well, I'm gonna start the anti-beanstalk at being 5'10".
I know.
Start my own one.
I'm like
me and Chris can make our own.
I'm like a half an inch too short.
I'm not even.
We're like big platform sneakers or something.
Well, so that was brought up last time because I think Taylor's right on the cusp, and they will actually measure you in socks, so you can't.
I just think it's hilarious that they measure you. It's like that in an amusement park. Like you can only ride this ride if you.
Exactly. Get the bar next door to that. And all those 6'1.5" and shorter people go hang out with you next door.
Rejects next door.
But then one other super quick plug. So I was at a book launch last week with Rick Williams and Foley Hoag, and they had basically his book is Create the Future, and so really a pretty interesting read. I know that Jeff, I'm going to make an introduction of him to you, I think there's some parallels with you guys as far as getting your books out there, getting your broader business out there aligned with it. So make those intros as well. But Create the Future by Rick Williams. I won the raffle for a sailing expedition with about 4 or 5 of them. So it should be pretty cool.
Oh, I think you mentioned that. That's exciting.
Cool.
So should be a lot of fun.
It's one of these days we're gonna have a whole episode about the perks of networking. So
yeah, I feel like Steven has a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, he also, he brings wine with him everywhere he goes. I mean,
yeah, it's hard to not make friends when your business.
I will say my biggest perk of networking, I probably should keep this quiet. I got tickets for my 3 daughters to go see Taylor Swift about 18 months ago for free. Through my network, I will say. So it was a pretty cool perk.
I remember you got tickets. You did not tell me it was through networking though, so you might need to share that plug.
Well, I mean, it was through somebody I'd known for a few years, but met through networking, which is we talked real quick. So I had a gentleman in my wedding. He has a younger brother. This guy was in his younger brother's wedding. Obviously, we weren't at each other's weddings, but just had a conversation once we met, figured that out. All right, let's grab a coffee. And, years later, we're still friends. And I had made him aware at a coffee we had probably a few months before that I was in the market for tickets. And he said, let me see what I can do. Called me on Tuesday when the concert was Friday and had tickets. So I was like, well, you're the man. So I do everything I can to take care of him now, but I don't think I can repeat that.
If you ever get free ones again and you don't want them, just, you know who to call.
I feel like you just did the networking version of a mic drop. So with that,
he had to just let that one in there. He knows how much I love Taylor Swift.
I just put it in there. It's a great thing. I think that maybe that's the hook that when you post about this episode, you should say it.
There are some benefits. Don't go looking for them, but they do arise every now and again.
Well, maybe Chris is going to be doing that for all new employees or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This episode now. Anyway, Chris, it's been terrific to have you on. Thank you. And
thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Chris. Good to see
really
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're gonna end here and then